You are told that wealth is born of hard work and thrift. This is a comforting half-truth, taught to keep the gears of commerce turning, but the principles that build empires, the ones that shape industries and last for generations, are not preached from any pulpit. They are practiced in silence. I am not a specter from the past, but the embodiment of an idea. The idea that fortune is not found, but meticulously constructed. It is an act of architecture, not a stroke of luck. Many people spend their lives collecting the stones, believing that a large enough pile will one day become a castle. They do not understand that the design, the very foundation of thought upon which one builds, is what truly matters. True wealth begins not in the pocket, but as an unwavering, orderly framework within the mind, a blueprint for reality. There is a profound and often overlooked distinction between simply having money and commanding wealth. The man who possesses money is merely a passenger on a financial vessel, subject to the whims of the current and the tide. He celebrates when the seas are calm and panics when a storm appears. The man who commands wealth, however, is the captain. He understands the mechanics of the ship, the patterns of the weather, and uses the very forces that would sink others to propel himself forward with greater speed and purpose. He is an active agent, not a passive beneficiary. From my earliest days, I kept a detailed ledger, accounting for every single cent. My neighbors saw this as the mark of a miser, a boy obsessed with small savings. They were mistaken. This was not an exercise in thrift. It was an education in the flow of capital. Each penny was a soldier, and I was its general. I needed to know its position, its purpose, and its potential. To not understand the movement of the smallest part of your enterprise is to invite chaos and inefficiency into the whole. Order, absolute and unflinching, is the bedrock of any great undertaking. The greatest error a man can make is to attach his emotions to the currency in his hands. Money is a tool, nothing more. It is a hammer with which to build or a lever with which to move the world. To feel elation at its presence or despair at its absence is the mark of an amateur. A master carpenter does not weep for a lost nail, nor does he fall into a state of euphoria over a new saw. He respects his tools, he understands their function, and he employs them with a dispassionate, focused precision. Your feelings are a liability in the world of high finance. These principles I share are deemed forbidden not because they violate any man-made law, but because they defy modern sensibilities. They demand a detachment and a long view that a society obsessed with immediate gratification finds cold, even cruel. To follow this path, one must be willing to operate on a different timeline and with a different set of motivations than the masses. It requires one to see the world not as it is, but as a system of forces to be understood, harnessed, and directed toward a predetermined end. The first action in constructing a lasting edifice is not to acquire materials, but to secure absolute control over the ground upon which it will stand. You must understand the terrain, its strengths and its weaknesses, and ensure that no outside force can shift the foundation once it is laid. Most men rush to build, eager to see the walls rise, only to find their structure stands on land that does not truly belong to them, vulnerable to the claims and pressures of others. The beginning of all power is control over your environment. Therefore, the first rule is this: seek not ownership but dominion. This is a concept the common man struggles to grasp. He is taught to value the deed, the title, the certificate of ownership. He wishes to own a business, a factory, a piece of land. He believes that possession is power. But ownership without control is a gilded cage. It makes you a target, a fixed point upon which all the pressures of the marketplace can be brought to bear. Your destiny remains in the hands of others. The man who owns a single successful factory may feel wealthy, but he is a servant to many masters. He is dependent on the supplier of his raw materials, who can raise prices at a whim. He is at the mercy of the railroads that transport his goods, who dictate the rates and schedules. He is vulnerable to the whims of the market, which can turn against his product without warning. He owns the factory, yes, but he is merely one link in a very long chain, and any other link can break and bring about his ruin. Dominion, by contrast, is the control over the essential systems through which an entire industry must pass. It is not necessary to own every tree in the forest, but it is immensely powerful to own the only river down which all the timber must float. It is the identification and mastery of the bottlenecks, the critical points of passage that are indispensable to all participants in the field, whether they are your competitors, your suppliers, or your customers. Dominion is a more subtle, yet infinitely more potent, form of power than simple ownership. Consider a great river. Many men will spend their lives building and owning boats to sail upon it. They will compete for cargo, for passengers, for speed. But the man who understands dominion will not build a boat. He will build the locks, the dams, and the ports. He will control the flow of the river itself. Every boat, no matter who owns it, must then negotiate with him for passage. His influence extends far beyond a single vessel and shapes the activity of the entire waterway. This is the difference in thinking. To apply this principle, one must cease to think in terms of isolated assets and begin to think in terms of integrated systems. You must map out the entire ecosystem of your chosen field. Where does the value originate? What path does it travel? Where are the points of transition, of transformation, of distribution? Identify the most critical, irreplaceable link in that chain. That is the point upon which you must focus all of your energy and capital. That is the key to the kingdom. This very principle was the blueprint for my great undertaking in the oil business, while others scrambled to discover and own the wells. Chasing the speculative fever of drilling, I recognized that this was a chaotic and unpredictable game. The true, constant, and non-negotiable point in the entire industry was not the source of the crude, but the process of refining it into a usable product, like kerosene for the lamps of the world. All oil, regardless of who found it, had to be refined. Our focus, therefore, was to achieve dominance in refining. We sought to make our process so efficient, so cost-effective that it became the logical choice for any producer. The next critical point was transportation. We negotiated relentlessly with the railroads for favorable rates, using our volume as a lever. When that was not enough, we rendered their power obsolete by building our own pipelines, a private river of oil that we, and we alone, controlled. We seized dominion over the flow. This led naturally to vertical integration. To ensure the lowest costs and highest quality, we began manufacturing our own barrels. We purchased our own forests for the timber. We built our own wagons for distribution. Every step, from the ground to the lamp, was analyzed and brought under a system of centralized control. The goal was not to monopolize for the sake of accumulation, but to create a system so efficient and predictable that it could bring order to a volatile industry. We were then able to stabilize prices, which had previously swung wildly, harming both producers and consumers. By controlling the refining and transportation, we could create a predictable environment, which in turn allowed for long-term planning and investment that benefited the entire economy. This was a consequence of dominion. It was not about owning every drop of oil, but about being the undisputed master of the process through which that oil became valuable to civilization. The objective was never to own the entire oil patch. That would have been a fool's errand, an inefficient use of capital. The objective was to control the arteries of the industry, to be the heart that pumped the lifeblood of American light and industry. That is the subtle yet monumental difference between the mindset of a mere business owner and the architect of an industrial empire. The first owns a piece, the second commands the entire board. Once a structure of control is established in the present, the wise man turns his attention to the future, and the future is defined by one constant, the periodic eruption of human fear and uncertainty. The common man flees from this volatility. He seeks shelter, he prays for calm. He does not realize that the storm itself is where the greatest opportunities are to be found. He sells his assets for a pittance to find safety, not understanding the nature of the transaction. This brings us to the second rule. The panic of others is your greatest asset. Human nature is predictable. In times of prosperity, men are gripped by irrational exuberance, bidding up the price of assets far beyond their intrinsic worth. In times of crisis, they are seized by an equally irrational terror, and they will cast away their most valuable possessions for a fraction of their true value, simply to feel the temporary relief of holding cash. This cycle is as certain as the turning of the seasons. Fortunes of a truly generational scale are not made in the bright sunshine of a bull market when everyone is a genius. They are forged in the darkest heart of a financial panic, when there is, as the saying goes, blood in the streets. It is in these moments of maximum pessimism that the price of quality assets becomes utterly detached from their long-term earning power. This dislocation between temporary perception and permanent value is the greatest opportunity ever afforded to a prepared mind. This is not a matter of luck or timing the market. It is a matter of preparation and discipline. While others are leveraging themselves to the hilt during the good times, the prudent man builds his reserves of capital. He maintains a state of readiness. He knows the storm will come, and when it does, and others are forced to liquidate their holdings to meet their obligations, he is ready to act as a buyer of last resort, exchanging his stable capital for their high-quality, now deeply discounted assets. To execute this strategy requires an almost inhuman level of emotional control. You must remain calm when all around you are in a state of frenzy. You must be buying when every instinct and every voice in the popular press is screaming at you to sell. This means you must have a conviction in your own analysis of value that is unshakable. You must turn off the noise of the market and listen only to the cold, hard calculus of business fundamentals and long-term potential. This rule is considered forbidden because it runs contrary to the deepest instincts of herd survival. Society teaches us to seek the comfort and safety of the crowd, to run when others run, to hide when others hide. This principle demands the opposite. It demands that you calmly and deliberately walk toward the fire from which everyone else is fleeing, because you understand that at the heart of the inferno lie the greatest bargains of a lifetime. It is the ultimate contrarian act. I recall the great financial panics of the 19th century. I saw men who were considered titans of industry one day become bankrupt beggars the next. They had built their enterprises on a foundation of debt and hope. When the crisis came, they were exposed. Their factories, their railroads, their mines all fundamentally sound. Productive assets were cast onto the market as if they were worthless scraps, all because their owners could not meet their short-term obligations. Our strategy was never to attempt to predict the precise bottom of a crash. That is a fool's game. Rather, our approach was to begin acquiring assets methodically once we judged them to be significantly undervalued. With a time horizon not of months or years, but of decades, we would purchase a stake in a sound but distressed company, then another, and another, averaging down our cost as the panic deepened, confident in the eventual return to sanity and the enduring value of what we were buying. This was how many of our competitors were absorbed into our enterprise. It was not, as is often claimed, an act of predation. It was a logical consolidation. During a crisis, the inefficient and poorly managed businesses are the first to fail. By acquiring their useful assets and integrating them into our more efficient system, we brought stability and strength to the industry as a whole. We were replacing chaos with order, weakness with strength, at a moment when no one else had the capital or the courage to do so. After the buying is done, an equally important virtue is required: patience. The market's memory is short, but its moods can be long. It may take years for the value of the assets you purchased in the depths of a depression to be recognized again by the public. During this time, you must be content to operate them efficiently, collect their earnings and ignore the prevailing sentiment. The harvest will come, but it cannot be rushed. You must have the fortitude to wait. You see now how the first rule enables the second. The principle of dominion, by creating a highly efficient and cash-generative enterprise, provides the steady stream of capital necessary to build the vast reserves required to act decisively during a panic. One principle feeds the other. A stable core business allows you to take advantage of the instability everywhere else. They are two parts of the same engine of wealth creation, working in perfect concert. Now, having established a system of dominion and having used the cyclical nature of fear to expand it, one faces the final and most profound challenge. An enterprise, no matter how vast, and a fortune, no matter how large, are fragile things if they are merely collections of assets. They are subject to the decay of time, the shifting of political winds, and the dilution of purpose by future generations. The final step is to transform this material wealth into a permanent self-perpetuating legacy. This leads to the third and most misunderstood rule: treat charity as your most important business. The word charity, as it is commonly used, is a disservice to the concept. For most, it is an emotional act, a simple transfer of funds from the wealthy to the needy to alleviate guilt or to generate a feeling of magnanimity. This type of giving is like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it. It is inefficient, temporary, and addresses only the symptoms, not the root cause of a problem. I speak not of charity, but of strategic philanthropy. This is the practice of applying the same rigorous principles of efficiency, measurement, and long-term thinking that one uses to build a great business to the great problems of mankind. You do not simply give a poor man a fish. You do not even teach him to fish. You fund the scientific research that will revolutionize aquaculture, ensuring there is abundant fish for everyone, for all time. You seek to solve the problem at its source. The return on this investment is not measured in dollars and cents. It is measured in the advancement of human civilization. A healthier, better educated, and more stable population creates a more prosperous environment for everyone. It reduces social unrest, fosters innovation, and builds a better world for your descendants to inhabit. Strategic philanthropy is the ultimate investment in the long-term security and prosperity of the society, upon which your own fortune depends. It is the highest form of self-interest. This rule is forbidden because it strips philanthropy of its sentimental romance. It treats human progress as an engineering problem. It suggests that a dollar given out of cold, calculating logic to a scientific laboratory is more effective than $1,000 given out of a warm heart to feed the hungry for a day. This offends many people. They prefer to see giving as an act of pure altruism, not as the most sophisticated business strategy of all. A man's legacy is not the fortune he leaves in his accounts. That is a fleeting, perishable thing. A true legacy is the creation of self-sustaining institutions that continue to operate and generate value for society long after the founder has turned to dust. A university, a medical research foundation, a scientific board. These are engines of progress. They are far more enduring and far more powerful than any private family trust or holding company could ever hope to be. This was the thinking behind the creation of entities like the Rockefeller Foundation. Its mission was not to be a perpetual dispenser of aid, but a catalyst for change. It was an organization designed to identify the root causes of major global problems in public health, in agriculture, in education, and to apply significant capital and expertise to solving them permanently. It was structured to operate with the same efficiency and focus as my most profitable business venture. Consider our campaign to eradicate the hookworm disease in the American South. This was not a simple act of donating medical supplies. It was a comprehensive, data-driven public health initiative that involved education, treatment, and infrastructure improvement. The result was not just the curing of a disease, but a dramatic increase in the economic productivity and well-being of an entire region. It was a strategic investment in human potential with a return that continues to compound to this day. Similarly, the funding for the University of Chicago and other educational institutions was not a simple gift. It was an investment in building the intellectual infrastructure of the nation. These were the places that would train the future generations of leaders, scientists, and innovators. By building the institution, you do infinitely more good than by simply paying the tuition for a handful of students. You build the factory that produces the knowledge for generations to come. This approach also serves a pragmatic purpose. Over time, it fundamentally reshapes the public perception of a great fortune. The name, once associated perhaps with ruthless business tactics, becomes synonymous with progress, health, and enlightenment. This public goodwill is a form of psychic armor, a powerful defense for the preservation of the family's influence, and the security of its assets against the shifting tides of politics and public opinion. It is the ultimate act of reputation management. This investment in social progress is the most effective long-term insurance policy a family can purchase. It is far more reliable than any financial instrument. By making yourself an indispensable benefactor to the society in which you live, you create a powerful incentive for that society to protect your legacy. You align your family's interests with the interests of civilization itself. This is how a fortune is made, not just to last, but to matter. These three rules complete a cycle. Dominion generates the immense and steady cash flow. The strategic use of panic and chaos allows for the periodic and dramatic expansion of that capital base. And strategic philanthropy then converts that private financial capital into enduring social capital, creating a legacy that protects the fortune and gives it a purpose that transcends mere accumulation, ensuring its perpetuity. And so, we see the three forbidden rules are not separate maxims, but a single, integrated system of thought and action. First, you gain control over the essential architecture of an industry, not through scattered ownership but through strategic dominion. Second, you use the inevitable panics and crises of the financial world as your primary opportunity for acquisition and expansion. Third, you convert your accumulated wealth into a perpetual legacy by treating philanthropy as your most serious and efficient business. They are not independent choices from which one can pick and choose. They are profoundly interconnected. Without the stable capital generated by dominion, one lacks the resources to act during a panic. Without the opportunities seized during a panic, the growth of the enterprise will stagnate. And without the protective legacy built through strategic philanthropy, the entire structure will eventually be eroded by time, taxes, and the changing sentiments of society. The unifying philosophy behind all three is a dispassionate, systematic, and long-term view of the world. It requires one to see the entire chessboard, not just the single piece in front of you. It is the ability to look at the chaotic and emotional affairs of men and to discern within them the predictable, machine-like patterns of a system, to find the levers that, when pulled with the right amount of force at the right time, produce extraordinary and lasting results. Let me be clear, these principles are not a path to quick riches or easy popularity. They are a blueprint for the methodical construction of an empire of industry and influence, designed to endure for a century or more. They require a temperament that is rare in any age, a comfort with being misunderstood, a patience that borders on the inhuman, and a relentless focus on efficiency and the fundamental realities of a system rather than its superficial appearances. I challenge you, therefore, to examine your own endeavors, whether they be in business, in your career, or in the management of your personal finances. Are you seeking simple ownership, or are you striving for a form of dominion over your niche? Do you fear volatility and panic, or are you preparing yourself to see it as an opportunity? And finally, what is the ultimate purpose of your accumulation? Are you merely spending and consuming, or are you investing in a legacy that will outlive you? The cost of applying this mindset is significant. It often requires you to stand alone, to make decisions that your peers will call foolish or even predatory. It demands that you trust your own meticulous analysis over the roaring consensus of the crowd. It is a lonely path, but it is the only path I know that does not lead to the mediocrity and ruin that eventually befall all those who follow the common wisdom. The greatest undertakings are always, at their heart, a solitary affair. These were the pillars upon which my work was built. They are not intended for all, nor should they be. The question I leave you with is not whether you should follow them, but whether you possess the clarity to understand the world in which they operate. Begin by identifying the principle most forbidden to your own way of thinking, and share in the discussion below why it challenges you. For discourse is the first, necessary step toward mastery.